she, su, shoe, sip, ship, ash, rush, push, sheet, sha, washing, Swedish, shawl, shake machine, English, shop, show, special, shrunk, shut, finish, shouldn't sure, wish, demonstration, television, treasure, garage, casual clothes, Peugeot, Asia, measuring tape, unusual collision, ships, chips, ship, chip, cherry, shop, chop, cash, catch, wash, watch, children, butcher's shop, Mrs. Church, check, charm, chops, much, chaser, shoulder, which, cheaper, a delicious chicken, choose, children's lunch, orange juice, rich child, which job, village jail, watch chain, college chase, large gentleman, which chair, large cherries, huge jam jar, how much cheese, teach German. More US adults who do not already have children are saying they are unlikely to ever have them. A new Pew Research Center survey finds findings that could draw renewed attention to the risk of declining birth rates for industrialized nations. Experts are concerned that the US birth rate, which has declined for the sixth straight year, may not fuel enough population growth on its own to keep the future economy afloat and fund social programs. Women between the ages of 18 to 49 and men between 18 and 59 who said they are not parents were asked the questions. Thinking about the future, how likely it is that you will have children someday? In October, 26% of them said it is very likely, a 6-point drop from 2018 when 32% answered very likely. Meanwhile, the share of Americans who answered not too likely in 2021 grew to 21% compared to the 16% in 2018. When asked for a reason, 56% of childless adults who said it's not all or not too likely they will ever have children said it's because they just don't want them. That's a change from in 2018, when 63% of childless adults in these categories said it was because they had no desire for children. This time around 43% cite other reasons including medical issues, economies, or financial reasons, a lack of partner. How about of the quicksand? How the child care crisis is keeping moms out of work. When the pandemic led to a lack of child care, single mothers like Dennis Tyree were left in the lurch, unable to work. Coupled with the recent release of federal demographic data, this poll points to long-term evolution in parenthood trends in the United States. The spiraling pulse of child care, health care, and education, along with global instability, including the coronavirus pandemic and climate change, could all be contributing to a broader change in attitudes to marriage and priorities in life. U.S. birth rate fall to its lowest level in decades in wake of pandemic. In April, the Census Bureau reported that in the last decade, the U.S. population grew at the second slowest rate for any 10 years period since the nation's founding. Pew survey 3,866 parents and non-parents online in late October as part of broader study of nearly 10,000 U.S. adults, known as the American Trans Panel Survey. Those who said they have no children were asked to rate their desire to have them in the future, while adults who said they already have children were asked to rate their likelihood of having more. The same questions were asked in a similar poll. Pew conducted in late July to early August 2018, enabling a comparison of trends over time. There was no difference based on gender in the responses among parents and non-parents. According to Pew, Men and women are equally likely to say they will probably not have kids or more kids in the future. There was a difference based on age. However, with adults in their 40s, far more likely than younger adults to say they are unlikely to have any more children in the future. The Biden administration has attempted to tackle some of roadblocks to higher fertility through its roughly $2 trillion Build Back Better bill, which recently passed the House and is now moving to the Senate. The bill included funding for universal pre-K as well as the first national paid family and medical leave program. She was walking lazily, for the fierce April sun was directly overhead. Her umbrella blocked its rays, but nothing blocked the heat, the sort of raw, wild heat that crushes you with its energy. A few buffalo were tethered under coconuts, browsing the perch fetch. Occasionally, a car went past, leaving it straight in the melting pitch like the wake of a ship at sea. Otherwise, it was quiet, and she saw no one. In her long white Sunday dress, you might have taken Ginny Nerin for 14 or 15. In fact, she was 12, a happy, uncomplicated child with nature as open as the red hibiscus that decorated her black, waist-laying hair. Generations earlier, her family had come to Trinidad from India as overseers on the sugar plantation. Her father had had some success through buying and clearing land around Rio Cristalino and planting it with coffee. On a dusty verge, 20 yards ahead of Ginny, a car pulled up. She had noticed it cruise by once before, but she did not recognize it and could not make out the driver through its dark windows, themselves as black as its gleaming paintwork. As she walked past it, the driver's glasses started to open. "Hello, Ginny," she heard behind her. She paused and turned. A slight color rose beneath her dusky skin. Rafi Kirjani was tall and lean, and always well-dressed. His black eyes and large white teeth flashed in the sunlight as he spoke. Everyone in Rio Cristalino knew Rafi. Ginny often heard her unmarried sisters talk ruefully of him, of how if only their father were alive and they still had land, one of them might marry him, and then they would squabble over who it might be and laugh at Ginny because he was too simple for any man to want. "How do you know my name, Ravi?" she asked with a thrill. "How do you know mine? Everyone knows your name. You're Mr. Kirjani's son." "Right. And where's you going, Ginny?" She hesitated and looked down at the ground again. "To chapel," she said with a faint smile. "But Ginny, good Hindus go to the temple." His rich, cultured voice was gently mocking as he added with love. "Or maybe the temple pandits aren't your taste in color." She blushed more deeply. In the reference to Father Oliver, she did not know how to reply. It was true that she liked the young French priest, with his funny accent and blue eyes, but she has been going to the Catholic chapel for months before he arrived. She loved its cheerful hymns and its simple creed of one God, so different from those miserable Hindu gods who squabble with each other like her sister at home. But, added to that vulgarity of Rafi's remark, bewildered her because his family were known for their reading. People always said that Rafi would be a man of honor like his father. Rafi looked suddenly grave. His dark skin seemed even darker. It may be that he regretted his words. Possibly he saw the confusion in Ginny's white-brown eyes. In any case, he did not wait for an answer. "Can I offer you a lift to chapel in my 21st birthday person?" he asked, putting his sunglasses back on. She noticed how thick their frame were. Real gold, she thought, like the big fat watch on his wrist. "It's a Mercedes from Papa. Do you like it?" he added nonchalantly. From the shade of her umbrella, Ginny peered up at a small lone cloud that hung motionless above them. The sun was beating down mercilessly, and there was an urge in the air and an overpowering sense of growth. With a handkerchief, she wiped the sweat from her forehead. Rafi gave a tug at his collar. It's air conditioned, Ginny, and you will be late for chapel. But chapel must have been the last thing on Rafi's mind when Ginny, after a moment's hesitation, accepted his offer. For he drove her instead to a quiet sugar field outside town, and there, with the Mercedes concealed among the sugar canes, he introduced himself into her. Ginny was in a daze. Young as she was, she barely understood what was happening to her. The beat of calypso filled her ears, and the sugar canes towered over her as the cold draft from the air conditioner played against her knees. Afterwards, clutching the rich flower that had been torn from her hair, she lay among the tall, sweet-smelling canes and sobbed until the brief tropical twilight turned to starry night. But she told no one, not even Father Oliver. 2 weeks later, in the little market town of Rio Cristalino was alive with gossip. Raffi Kirjani had been promised that the hand of Senita Murpalani, like the Kirjanis, the Murpalanis were an established Indian family, one of the wealthiest in the Caribbean. But while the Kirjanis were diplomats, the Murpalanis were a commercial family. They had made their fortune in retailing long before the collapse in oil prices had emptied their customers' pockets. And now Murpalini stores were scattered throughout Trinidad and some of the other islands. Prudently, they had diversified into banking and insurance, and as a result, their influence was felt at the highest level. It was a benevolent influence, of course, never abused, for people always said the Murpalanis were a respectable family and well above reproach. They had houses in Port of Spain, Tobago, and Barbados, as well as in England and India, but their main residence was a magnificent, sprawling, colonial-style mansion just to the north of Rio Cristalino. The arranged marriage would be the social event of the following year. When Ginny heard of Rafi's engagement, the loathing she had conceived for him grew into a sort of numb hatred. She was soon haunted by a longing to repay that heartless, arrogant brute. She would give anything to humiliate him, to see that leering, conceited grin wave from the face. But outwardly she was unmoved. On weekdays she went to school, and on Sundays she went still to Father Oliver's afternoon service. "Girl, you sure does have a lot of confess to that Whitey," her mother would say to her each time she came home late from chapel. He's not a Whitey. He's a man of God. That's us maybe, child, but don't forget he does be a man first." The month passed, and she did not see Rafi again. And then it rained. All through August the rain hardly stopped. It rattled persistently on the galvanized roof until you thought you would go mad with the noise. And if I stopped, the air was as sticky as treacle, and you prayed for it to rain again. Then, one day in October, towards the end of the wet season, when Ginny's family were celebrating her only brother's 18th birthday, something happened that she had been dreading for weeks. She was lying in the hammock on the balcony, playing with her 6-year-old nephew Penny. Suddenly, Penny cried out, "Ginny, why are you so fat?" Throughout the little frame house, all celebration stopped. On the balcony, curious eyes were turned upon Ginny, and you could see what the boy meant. "God have mercy on you, Virginia." "Watch the shape of your belly," cried Mrs. Nerine, exploding with indignation and pulling her daughter indoors, away from the prying neighbors' ears. Her voice was loud and hard, and there was a blackness in her eyes, like the blackness of the skies before thunder. How could she have been so blind? She cursed herself for it, and harsh question burst from her lips. "How does you bring such a shame upon us, girl? The worthless layabouts does you threw yourself upon. What man have you now? No decent man, that does be sure. And why does you blank your father's name like this at your age? The man as didn't even live to see you burn. Thank the God he didn't have to know of this. You sure got some explaining to your precious man of God, child." At last her words were exhausted. She sat down heavily, her weak heart pounding dangerously at her chest, having from the exertion of her outburst. Then Ginny told her mother of the afternoon that Rafi Kridiani had raped her. There was a long silence after that, and all you could hear was Miss Nerine wheezing. When at last she spoke, her words were heavy and disjointed. If anybody have to get damnation, that Kridiani boy will get it, she said. Ginny's sisters were awestruck. Shall we take her over to health center, Ma? Asked Indra. The midwife come today. If you crazy girl, is you crazy girl? You all just know that woman just runs mouth like a duck's bottom. You all leave this to me. That night, Mrs. Narine took her young daughter to see Dr. Khan, an old friend of her husband, whose discretion she could count on. There was enough doubt about it. The child was pregnant. And what can us do, Dr. Khan? Asked Mrs. Narine. Marry her off, quick as you can. The little old doctor replied bluntly. Mrs. Narine scoffed. Who will take her now, doctor? I just beg you, there's nothing you can do for us? A welcome breeze came through the slats of the surgery windows. Outside you could hear the shrill persistent sound of cicadas, while mosquitoes crowded at the screens, attracted by the bare bulb over the simple desk. Dr. Khan sighed and peered over the frames of his glasses. Then he lowered his voice and spoke wearily, like a man who has said the same thing many times. I might arrange something for the baby once it's born, but it must be born, my dear. Your daughter is similarly built. She's young, a child herself. To you she looks barely 3 months pregnant. Don't fool yourself. If the dates she's given us are correct, in 3 months she'll be full term. Anything now would be too messy. And if it's born? Asked Mrs. Narine falteringly. If it's born, what has happened then? No, Ma, I want it anyway. I want to keep it, said Ginny quietly. Don't be a fool, child. It's my baby, Ma. I want to leave it. I want to keep it. And who's to look after you and pay for the baby? Even if the Kridiani does agrees to pay, who does you hope to marry? I'll marry, don't worry. You'll marry? You just be fool. Who will you marry? Kridiani, Ma, is going to marry Rafi Kridiani. Dr. Khan gave a chuckle. So your daughter is not such a fool as you think, he said. I told you to marry her off, and the Kridiani boy's worth a try. What does he have to lose? She's too clever. So Rafi Kridiani was confronted with the pregnant Ginny and reminded of the Sunday afternoon in the dry season when the canes were ready for her feasting. To the surprise of the Nerines, he did not argue at all. He offered at once to marry Ginny. It may be there for him. It was a welcome opportunity to escape cannibal arrangement for which he had little appetite. Though Sunita Murpalani indisputably had background, nobody ever pretended that she had looks. Or possibly he foresaw awkward police question that might have been difficult to answer once the fruit of his desires saw the light of day. Miss Narine was staged. Even Ginny was surprised at how little resistance he put up. Perhaps, she thought with a wry smile, he's not really so bad. Whatever his reasons, you had to admit Rafi acted honorably, and so did the jilted Murpalani family. If privately they felt their humiliation keenly, publicly they bore it with a composure, and people were amazed that they remained on speaking terms with the man who had insulted one of their women and broken her heart. Sunita's 5 brothers even invited Rafi to spend a day with them at their seaside villa in Mayaro. And as Rafi had been a friend of the family all his life, he saw no reason to refuse. The Murpalani brothers chose a Tuesday for outing. There was a little point, they said, in going at the weekend, with the working people littered the beach, and one of their Land Rovers for the 20-mile drive from Rio Cristalino. They were in a high spirit and joked with Rafi, while their servants stove cold chicken and salt beneath the rear bench seats and packed the ice boxes with beer and punch and rum. Then they scanned the sky for clouds and congratulated themselves on choosing such a fine day. Suraj, The eldest brother looked at his watch, and his feet shifted uneasily as he said, "It's time to hit the road." His brother gave a laugh and clambered on board. It was an old, sardonic laugh. The hard-top Land Rover cruised through Rio Cristalino to the crossroad at the town center. Already the market traders were pitching their roadside stall and erecting great canvas umbrellas to shield them from sun or rain. The promise of commerce was in the air, and the traders looked about expectantly as they loaded their stall with fresh mangoes or put the finishing touches to display of giant melons whose fleshy pink in north glistened scuttlingly out the cell phone. The Land Rover turned east toward Mayaro and a moment later was passing the cemetery on the edge of town. The road to the coast was busy with traffic in both directions, still carrying produce to market, and the frequent bends and potholes made the journey slow. At last, on an uphill street about 6 miles from Mayaro, the Land Rover was able to pick up speed. Its ripped tires beat on the reflector stands like a drum roll. In the early morning sun flashes through the coconut palms. Suddenly, a terrible thing happened. The rear door of the Land Rover swung open and Rafi Kirjani tumbled out, falling helplessly beneath the wheels of a heavily laden truck. At the inquest, the coroner acknowledged that the nature and extent of Rafi's injury made it impossible to determine whether he was killed instantly by the fall or subsequently by the truck. But it was clear at least he felt that Rafi had been alive when he fell from the Land Rover. The verdict was death due to misadventure. 3 days later, Rafi's remains were cremated according to Hindu rites. Unusual, a crush of people from all over Trinidad, distant relatives, old classmates, anyone claiming even the most tenuous connection with the dead man, come to mourn at the riverside pier outside Mayaro. Some of them were convinced that they could see in Rafi's death the hands of the gods, and they pointed for evidence to the grey sky and unseasonal rain. But the flames defied the rain, and the stench of burning flesh filled the air. A view spoke darkly of murder. Did not the Murpalanis have a complaining motive? And not by chance did they have the opportunity and the means, but mostly they agreed there was a tragic accident. It made little difference that it was a Murpalani truck that had finished Rafi off. Murpalani trucks were everywhere. Then they watched as the ashes were thrown into the muddy Otoyo River, soon to be lost in the warm waters of the Atlantic. Anyway, said one old mourner with a truck, "Who are we to ask questions?" The police closed their files on the case before the boy was called, and he shook the last of the rain from his umbrella and slapped impatiently at the mosquito. You might have thought that shock of Ravi's death would have included in Ginny a premature delivery, but quite the reverse. She attended in inquest and she mourned at the funeral. The expected date came and went. 6 more weeks elapsed before Ginny, by now 13, gave birth to a son at the public maternity hospital in San Fernando. When they saw the baby, the nurses clenched anxiously to each other. Then they took him away without letting Ginny see him. Eventually, they returned with one of the doctors, a big crow, who assumed his most unruffled bedside manner to reassure Ginny that the baby was well. "It's true he's a little pasty, my dear," he said as a nurse placed the baby in Ginny's arms. "But you see there'll be the late delivery, and don't forget you're very young, and you both had a rough time. Wait a day. 3 days his turn will soon have a healthy color." Ginny looked into her son's blue eyes and kissed them. And in doing so, a tremendous feeling of tiredness suddenly came over her. They were so very, very blue, so like Father Oliver. She sighed at the irony of it all, the ways of it all. Was the cruel doctor really so stupid? Surely he knew as well as he did that the pallid looks could never go.